Okay, you're now live, Chair Safar.
Thank you so much, Christina. So let's call to order this meeting, Finance Committee meeting of December 13th, 2021. It's 5:18 p.m. right now. Back to you, Christina.
Thank you. Assembly Bill 361 suspends certain provisions of the Brown Act, allowing public meetings like this one to be held by teleconference to help the spread of COVID-19. At this time, I will conduct roll call, and I would ask the chair to recognize me afterward to confirm certain matters for the record. Vice Chair Perkins.
Here.
Thank you. And Chair Safar.
Here, and
Thank you.
recognizing you again.
Thanks. Based on the responses to roll call, the record should reflect that all committee members can hear the proceedings clearly. If there are no objections, the record will further reflect that each committee member believes, based on voice or facial recognition or otherwise, that the persons representing themselves to be committee members are in fact committee members. Thank you.
Yes.
Seeing no objection, I will turn the meeting back over to the chair with a reminder that all votes must be taken by roll call.
Item number 2, public comment. Do we have any public comment?
I have not received any written comment for the meeting today. However, for those in the audience, if you would like to speak under public comment, please use the raise your hand button or *9 on your telephone at this time. It does not appear that we have any requests to speak from the public.
All right, then we'll close public comment. Item number 3, approval of minutes. 3.1, Finance Committee regular meeting, November 8, 2021. Would you like to move?
I'll move approval of the minutes of November 8th, 2021.
And I will second them.
Thank you. And then just a quick roll call vote is Vice Chair Perkins.
Yes.
And Chair Zafar.
Yes.
Thank you.
Item number 4, unfinished business. We have none. Item number 5, new business. 5.1, a draft resolution of the City Council of the City of San Ramon repealing and replacing the false alarm fees. Staff report by Dental Carson, Police Services Captain. Over to you, Captain.
All right, thank you very much, Vice Chair and Chair. Happy to be here tonight. What we have in front of you with our staff report, as you know, are well aware, we are revising the city ordinance as it pertains to false alarms and police response within the city of San Ramon. So one of the components of that is an adjustment to the fee resolution schedule that the city of San Ramon approved during the end of last fiscal year. So what we are doing is we're adjusting this fee schedule, and we're coming before you today just as a proposal with a recommendation that you review the fees as proposed and recommend forwarding it to the city council. These are in line with our neighboring agencies. One of the reasons why we established the fee schedule as it is in the proposed document is to directly align with our neighboring agencies. As a matter of fact, they mirror our neighbor to the north exactly. We didn't want to defer from them. And one of the other components that I wanted to make sure you're aware of is that we are not proposing and do not intend whatsoever to push any fee out or collect any fees for registrations associated with alarms. So again, you have the staff report in front of you, and we would like to take any questions you may have about the proposed fees. And also our recommendation is that you review it, and if it feels it is appropriate, then we forward it to the city council for the resolution.
I've reviewed it, and I think it's appropriate. I hope this has a intended effect of reducing the number of false alarms, and where it doesn't, it generates a revenue stream, but it hopefully reduces the number of false alarms we respond to. 3,000 is just unacceptable. It just no good reason to have that many false alarms. And I do appreciate the fact that there's no registration fee and there's no impact on your first false alarm in a permit year. And so people will know, you get a letter and it says, okay, you got one. Number 2 is going to cost you, and number 3 is going to cost you a bunch.
I think you answered most of the questions during the last council meeting when we had this in front of the council as well. So most of my questions were answered then too. You know, at that time, my concern was with, you know, the immense amount of alarm systems that people are putting in now with subscription and, you know, kind of you paid and forget it kind of model. So hopefully this is going to put it back on those agencies to make sure that, they build it into their subscription model as well. So yeah, no questions. I think we've reviewed it and looks good to me. So I'm ready to move it to
Do
city
we need a
council.
vote do we need a vote to move on this?
I think we need a recommendation to move it to council.
Let's move it to council.
All right.
See you tomorrow night.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. All right. With that, do we have any public comment, Christina?
We can definitely ask for public comment. I did not receive any written public comment, but for those in the audience that would like to make a comment on this item, please use the raise your hand button at this time. Does not appear that we have any requests to speak.
Right. So then we'll close public comment and move on to 5.2, draft of the annual comprehensive financial report for the fiscal year ending June 30th, 2021, staff report by Candace Daniels, Finance Division Manager. Over to you, Candace.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Before you, you have the staff report for the annual comprehensive financial report. Previously, the report was called the Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, or CAFR, but based upon GFOA recommendations, the name has been changed to the ACFR because the term CAFR is considered offensive in some areas of the world, and considering that GFOA is an international organization, they decided to change the name. So this is your June 30th, 2021 ACFR, prepared by I. Bailey, our city auditors. So starting with the pages 33 to 35 of the packet, which is the independent auditor's report. This just explains how the audit was performed, points out any significant changes, and basically states that their opinion is that the city's financial statements are fairly presented in all material aspects. Next is page 51, which is a statement of net position. We're showing a net position of $419.5 million, of which $368.6 million is invested in capital assets, 73.8 is restricted, and the negative $22.9 million is unrestricted. The net position decreased $30.8 million from the previous fiscal year. And some of the reasons for that were the decrease in assets. We had a net decrease in cash and investments, notes and loans receivable, and capital assets, which was offset by increases in accounts receivable, OPEB, and pension contributions. The increases in liabilities were in accrued payables, unearned revenue, compensated absences, long-term debt, and net pension liability, offset by decreases in OPEB liability and pension earnings. Any questions so far?
No.
Okay, moving to page 52, that's the statement of activities, and it shows to what extent each government function supports itself before the general tax dollars are allocated. Moving on to page 54, these are the balance sheet for the governmental funds. We're showing ending general fund balance of 19.2 million. And we have the total fund balance for all governmental funds was 97.1. The Doherty Valley had a zero ending fund balance. Moving on to page 56. These are the statement of revenue, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for all governmental funds. It shows revenue by source and expenditures by department, also includes transfers and the net change in fund balance. From the general fund, the net change was 3.9 million. There was no change in the fund balance of the Doherty Valley Fund because it remained zero, just like last year. Total net change in all governmental funds was a decrease of 12.5 million, primarily due to CIP funds spent out of the SCC JIPA fund and transferring reserves that were held out of the debt service fund to the general fund.
So Candace, what was the Doherty Valley Fund again?
That's the fund that the city had to set up for the Doherty Valley area of the city. We receive tax revenue. We have public services expenditures and police expenditures coming out of that fund. The fund is subsidized by the general fund every year by a transfer in. And at the end of the year, if there are any funds left over, they're transferred back to the general fund. That's why it has a zero fund balance at the end of every year.
And so now when we've incorporated all of Doherty Valley and everything, would that just all be one general fund, or are we still going to keep this Doherty Valley Fund in place?
I'm not sure if it's still going to be a requirement going forward after everything's built out.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Joe, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but considering that we're still doing the billing, we required to still do the billing for the county. I think we still have to have that separate fund. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Currently, this is a product of the settlement agreement way back when, right? So it's a very complex and semi-convoluted over the last 20 plus years. And so it's a requirement that we track our expenditures in Doherty Valley. And then there's a county service area, which is set up that actually the M29, which actually allows funding to pass from the county to the city. And that's just a funding mechanism that's in place to allow for that. And currently we're looking at trying to kind of close down the Doherty settlement agreement or dissolve it to the point we can. So we're exploring that on several different areas since we've annexed all the areas out there. But until we do so, we're required to have that tracking, and that is simply what it is at this point. And that's why you see money. It's not really a balance in which Doherty, the general fund and Doherty Valley will reconcile between the two. And that's why we pass funds from the general fund to Doherty Valley to reconcile that fund. And that's based also on the settlement agreement and a formula that was generated by the settlement agreement, which is a sales tax calculation, property tax calculation, and some other calculations that are in there. So I probably said a lot of things and you only probably understood about half of them because it's very complex, and that's not something I can explain in 5 minutes. But the answer to your question is yes, that fund will be there for a while until we're able to successfully dissolve all the workings of the settlement agreement.
Yeah, and it made a lot of sense because I was tying it back to the Doherty Valley meeting we had, and some of the meetings that are happening for dissolution of it. So I just
That's
wanted,
right. I
was trying to connect
yes.
trying to connect the
Yep.
dots as to how this works. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate you giving me all of that detail for my sake and public's sake.
Okay, so moving on to page 59, this is a statement of net position for the proprietary funds, or otherwise known as internal service funds. The ending net position was 12.4 million, which is a decrease of 1.6 million. On page 64, you have the statement of net position for fiduciary funds, which includes a successor agency. The ending net position was a negative 56.1 million, and that's due to the tax allocation bonds that are held in that fund. So it's going to have a negative fund balance until all that debt's been paid off. Moving to pages 77 to 82, this is the cash investment note. It shows the total cash investments of 108 million. And it has details of our investments, of our investment ratings and things of that nature. On page 87, you have the capital assets, which is note 7, shows that the city has capital assets of 390.5 million. Moving on to pages 88 to 91. This is a schedule of long-term debt showing a total long-term debt of 40.3 million. Now moving on to page 96. This is a fund balance sheet. It just shows the categories of all the fund balances of every fund of the city. And I just want to note that if you looked at page 96, you're not going to see what I have in the description, because I'm putting that we have committed reserves of 10.7 million for revenue stabilization and assigned reserves of 4 million for future expenditure volatility. And that was a recommendation by management partners. So that change hasn't been made yet in the document, but it will be made by the time we finalize the document. Moving on to pages 97 to 108. This is a note that explains in detail the city's pension liability and everything about the pension plans, including the Doherty Regional Fire Authority and the city's portion of that liability. It's showing a net pension liability for the city of 47.2 million, which is an increase of 8.4 million from last fiscal year. The city's portion of that is 8.1 million from the prior, is 8.1 million, excuse me, increase 8.1 million from the prior year. And the remaining increase was the 300,000 for the Doherty Regional Fire Authority. Moving on to pages 108 to 111. These are the post-employment healthcare benefits, or OPEB. We're showing an OPEB liability of 1.3 million. Moving on to pages 118 to 127. This is the required supplementary information. It lists a schedule of changes in the pension liability, schedule of pension contributions, and the schedule of OPEB funding progress. Moving on to pages 128 and 129. This is a schedule of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balances for the major funds, which are the General Fund and the Doherty Valley Fund. General Fund came in 3.1 million over budget estimates due to 5.3 million, came in over budget by 3.3 million because of the $5.3 million shortfall in revenues. The Doherty Valley Fund actually came in $200,000 better than budgeted. And even though I'm saying that it came in over budget, there was still an increase in the overall fund balance of the general fund. This is just a budget to actual comparison. Moving on to pages 134 to 136. These are the non-major governmental funds combining balance sheets, showing assets, liabilities, and ending fund balances for all of the non-major funds. And lastly, on pages 137 to 139, you have the revenues, statements of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance for the non-major governmental funds. And then starting on page 140, you have a budget to actual comparison for every fund. And that goes through toward the end of the document. And then you have the statistical section. So you probably saw different areas in the document that are highlighted in yellow. Those are things that still need to be updated that we're working on with the auditors. That will be completed before we finalize the document. And also we're working on the transmittal letter and the MD&A. Those will also be completed very soon. Are there any questions? You're on
You're
mute.
on mute.
On mute, okay, all right. I've tried, I think, more than once, and I would like, and there's a very near the beginning, let's see, where is it? A diagram of the city and staff and citizens of San Ramon and things like that. I'm trying to find it.
The org chart, that's on page 30.
Okay. I've been trying to get this put on there, and that you can, I don't know how you put it on a separate little line, but it reports to the council, and that is the auditor. The
Okay.
council, with working through the finance committee, every 5 years, we choose an auditor. And it is the council's auditor. It is not the finance department or the administrative services department auditor. They work for the council, and they do that because the council doesn't have the time or the expertise to actually do a comprehensive audit. And so we hire and choose an auditor. And so I would like that organization chart to reflect an auditor that
Okay,
works, that's a line from the council.
correct. I did make a note of that. I'll make sure that it's in the final document.
Thank you. And
If I
I
could-
would also like to have that show up on the city's website. There's a page on the city website that shows a organization chart similar to this. And I would like that one updated as well.
Okay.
Kelly, you have a comment?
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I think Vice Chair Perkins is exactly correct. The auditor, works for the council for the city. But typically an org chart, what we're showing here is the permanent FTE of the city. So we actually have lots of vendors under contract, but we don't show them.
But they don't work for the council. Those other, the people that do the landscaping, the people that do the janitorial, they don't work for the council. And you have boards, committees, and commissions on there, which are not FTEs.
True.
So for completeness, I would like the diagram to show an auditor.
Okay.
The auditor.
I just thought, I'm sorry, I just thought of a way that we could do that. We could do a dotted line to an auditor. That would make sense. Would that
I have a
work?
question around that. Audit is a very regular business for pretty much any company where auditors come in, generally for the CEO or whatever, and do an audit and provide that report, which is again kind of, checks, a form of checks and balances. So I don't know if I see them as reporting to council.
Absolutely, they
necessarily.
report to council. And this is where I have to disagree. Absolutely, they report to council. They are chosen by the council. They report to council. If you have an auditor at a company, in general, it reports to the board of directors. Okay, and the board of directors, works with the auditor. And we are, in effect, the board of directors. We, the council, are the board of directors. Joe Gorton is the CEO. Dave Hudson is the chairman of the board, if you want to use the corporate model. But it is important to me to show that we have an auditor that is independent of the city manager and the city staff. It is independent of them. We insist on their independence. And when we do this, now, obviously they work closely with the administrative services and the finance division and all the others. But this is important to me, that we show the auditor, particularly in a finance document.
Yeah, I mean, if we want to show the finance document, I don't have any issues with that. I don't know if on the city's website you need to.
I think
list
it
out an
belongs there
auditor.
too. I honestly do. It shows that we are taking our responsibility as we appoint members to the boards, committees, and commissions. We appoint the city manager, we appoint the city attorney, and we appoint the auditor. We approve other contracts, but they don't work for the council. Our landscapers and painters and tennis pros and all the others, they don't work for the council. They work for the city manager and the departments, but the auditor works for us. To me, that's important. I like to show that that relationship. I've tried multiple years to have that shown, but without a whole lot of success. But it's still, that relationship is important to me.
All right. Any other comments?
No, thank you guys for all the hard work that goes into that. It's, you do it every year, you do it so well. And I know it's not painless. I know it takes a lot of extra hours, but it is important that we are transparent with the citizens of San Ramon, that we show that, and obviously it pays off when you come to, we get a AAA rating on a bond issue. And I got to believe that the quality of our finance documents play a substantial role in that. Not just the quality of the document, but the management of the money that goes with it. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Candace, were you still walking us through this or you're done?
No, that was all I have.
All right. Thank you. Do we have any public comment?
We do not have any written comment, but we do have one member in the audience that would like to speak on this item.
Let's bring them in.
First is from Colin user 1.
Hi, I have several questions and I expect them to be answered. I would like to know who are authorized to transfer funds. Is it Mr. Sessions, or is there other people who are also authorized to transfer funds from our account to an outside organization? Number 2, I remember that Mr. Sessions had asked the council to hire an additional staff position for the finance department. I'm wondering if that's filled, because I've never seen any posting for that position. And on page 56, there is a line that is for long-term debt of $40,320,000 and $968. Is that pertaining to the recent bond that we had issued? And then is that the relation? Is there any relationship between that particular line item with pension total restricted, which was listed for $44,474,000 and $44,474,000 $411. I'm wondering if those two items have any relationships. Also, if our city is the one who builds all the electric car, stations, they should be considered as assets. So I don't know if they were listed as an umbrella asset, or I really think that we should list them separately as we build more. I think that the citizens would like to know exactly what is an asset that we own for those pumps. So I highly encourage that a line item to be separately listed instead of being lump summed. And then I was trying to see my contribution to the city of $2,500 due to the sandbox appeal fee this year. Nowhere was I able to find it. If it was going to be listed, I would think that fines and forfeitures under revenue is the right line item, but that category is completely zero. It is all dashed out. So where did my $2,500 go? And then who prepared this particular balance sheet before the audit was authorized by the council? Was it done by Mr. Sessions, the new staff, or the presenter? I don't know her name because I came in a little bit late and you guys are not following the agenda. It's supposed to be Lieutenant Captain Carson, I think. That's listed on the agenda. So I don't know what you guys are doing. So I apologize, presenter, that I don't know your name, but I'm wondering who prepared the balance sheet. Thank you.
Her name is on the agenda.
The presenter is Candace Daniels, and Captain Denton already presented, so we've been following the agenda. Do we have any anything we can reply with? Any specifics that the caller?
Well, the
has asked for?
$2,500 appeal fee would have been in the 21-22 year, not in the FY 20-21 year. So this is last year's money that ended in June. So your appeal fee wouldn't show up in this audit.
Any other
I
Well,
don't,
questions?
so what was,
The first
Sorry,
question was
but-
about who's authorized to transfer money.
Money.
okay. Well, there was no transfer of money to an outside agency. So that, I never stated that that happened. I mentioned a transfer to an inter-fund transfer, which is another fund within the city. So there was no transfer of money outside of the city.
Yeah. And for clarity, right, we have multiple funds where we can transfer money, and sometimes the council approves that transfer depending on the amount, if it's over a certain limit, and sometimes, you know, Joe, being the CEO of the city, manages that. And Kelly obviously is our finance administrator. So I think, you know, the budget and everything, again, the auditors work with you, but just like in any audit, I would say in any audit firm or any audits that happen, they work with staff to get the information, but then prepare an audit which is independent of anything that you've provided. Is that correct, Candace?
That's correct. So we provide the information to the auditors and they put the information in the report. We review everything to make sure that it's accurate before the document is finalized. So in terms of the balance sheets, I think that's what she mentioned. That's information that came out of our software system that we provided to the auditors.
And so how long between the draft and the time it's finalized?
It'll be finalized by the end of this month, but it's probably about 5 weeks or so normally.
Okay. I find it very, very useful, and I think the draft is a good, you know, copy for us to start looking at till it gets finalized and give any feedback. Does the rest of the council get sent the draft sent over so they can kind of start looking at it now? I know at least one council member had said, you know, sometimes they don't know till it gets to them on a council meeting. So can we provide them draft copies of this as well, the rest of the council?
Oh, we can definitely provide them a draft. I'm not sure if they automatically get the agenda for the finance committee or not.
I'm sure they do.
Well, then, yes, they would have gotten the draft then.
Okay. So my thing is if
Yeah,
they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, I see the policy committee agenda. So I'm assuming that the rest of the council gets the finance committee agenda.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much again, Candace, for presenting this. It's a really comprehensive document, and you know, the more I serve on the council and the more I learn about, you know, how our finances are done and run, and you know, again, we're doing a really good job of managing the city's finances. And I think as we look at the budgets from all the other cities, and you know, we probably have the smallest budget by revenue, and yet we're doing some amazing stuff with it. So I appreciate the, you know, everybody really making our dollars go much, much further. And
Thank
this,
you.
you know, this shows well.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we have, I'm just scrolling back to the agenda because I went all the way to the bottom of the document as I was following along. Committee member comments, item number 6. Scott.
No, I just want to thank everybody for indulging my lateness to conclude the TVTC meeting, which was successful. So
That's it. And then for next meeting, do we want to have it at 4 p.m. or will you continue to have a conflict?
I have a TVTC meeting on January 24th. So I was wondering if we could, I like having it on the Monday before a council meeting. But going forward, if we can work it out so that the TVTC and the Finance Committee meeting aren't on the same week, if you can work that out with Lisa. Unfortunately, the TVTC has 7 agencies, including 2 county supervisors and 5 council members. So the fact that we've actually managed to get 7 people from 7 jurisdictions to attend a meeting periodically, it's a real challenge. So I ask that we at least look at opportunities to move this meeting to a different time or a different day.
We may also be rotating come next
Yeah,
year.
we ought to see who's
That's,
who's doing what. But
right. So that
um,
might be happening as well.
yeah, and I appreciate that. So we'll see what happens.
So we can revisit this, say in January, when we know who the appointments are for the next policy, or I'm sorry, Finance Committee for that year. And if there's changes that need to be made, we'll take care of that in
Great.
January.
All right.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm the chair of TVTC through the end of June, I believe. And then after that, I'm assuming I'll be a member through the end of the calendar year. We don't want to change my position as chair right now because we're going through a very heavy agenda sessions right now at TVTC. That's all I got.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
No comments. I think then we're good. Item number 7, adjournment. The next Finance Committee meeting is scheduled for January 24th, 2022. Everybody, Happy New Year. If I don't see you on the Finance Committee again.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Goodbye.